Hello students, good morning. Today we will study William Butler Yeats' poem The Second Coming. William Butler Yeats was arguably the most accomplished, most widely esteemed 20th century poet who wrote in English. His eminence derived in particular from his tone, which combined the grandison with the everyday. And within Yeats' opus, The Second Coming is perhaps his most masterful, highly regarded poem, an epitome of Yeats' tone throughout his writing. The Second Coming takes as its theme as a catalysis with similarities to the end of the world scenario that have been sacked by several religions. Yet the poem never pinpoints which mythic figure is being realized. It never even divulges whether the catalysm is for the best or the for the worst. Further, despite a widely abstract and inherent preachy subject matter, its language is highly accessible, as, as familiar to a casual reader as to religious-minded scholar, due in part of its combination of high-mindedness and familiarity. The Second Coming has seemed too powerful, being timeless symbol and high fear into the imagination of inhabitants of modern world. While the poem is frequently linked to Russian and Irish political historical tumult, it is sometimes read as gasp before the fact of the horrors of the World War II. Still, the poem's dominant meaning is the ambiguous one. As a self-declared vision, it could have been influenced by a variety of catalysm event past or pending. Far from envisaging post-industrial progress as the deliverance of a world beyond God, the poem The Second Coming sees the 20th century as precisely modern, precisely moment when the world will truly undone. Indeed, since its publication in 1921, the poem has become sometime of an anthem for those who who detect immense demise in the world, regardless of the whether they view such an ending as cause for hope or for despair. So this is the introduction of the poem. Now come to the text of the poem. I will study 4 lines and then I will try to explain them. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. So we will start with these 4 lines. Okay. So turning and turning in the widening gyre. Gyre, what is gyre mean? Gyre generally are circular and spiral forms like vortexes or uh, tornadoes. Gyres are spindles or bobbins made of the two cones that meet internally. The smallest point of each cone enters the broad base of other, so that when the end of the thread is tugged, it will ultimately unwrap from each direction. So everyday gyres are tools tools used to allow the consistent feeding of threads into the swinging points. I think the meaning is clear now. So the opening line, very opening line, first line of the second coming presents the metaphor of spinning gyres. These gyres that are turning and turning in widening gyre mean these gyres are spinning. And the second image, uh, as I have told you, the meaning of these gyres, but Yeats gyre is a vast enough to contain a falcon and falconer. It is a gyre with the dimension of the world. What is more, its cycle is widening so greatly that the falconer who has trained his bird to return is now unable to summon the bird which cannot hear the cry to return home. Again, the falcon and Falconer are metaphors for encroaching distance and disorder, and so are in, and so far the second coming is an evasive and abstract poem. Then the poem announces badly that is happening, what is happening. Things fall apart. I want to tell you people that Chinua Achebe, the writer who made this title of his famous novel, Things Fall Apart. So, what is happening? Things fall apart. The fact that center of orders, control and sense, which operates like the falconer's cry to the falcon, no longer functionable but lose hold and signals of ominous message of doom. That is the disintegration of things at a vast scale should be accompanied by a release of anarchy is then surprising. What is unexpected is the anarchy is identified as mere. Is the anarchy no real threat? Is there something far worse than anarchy which presents draft social coercion? While the other questions are unresolved, the qualification of anarchy as mere dampens the doom of the poem, breaking up its message into something more complex than, say, familiar urgent announcements printed of the placard, the warn, the end is near, as it is given in the fourth line of this poem. Now come to the second stanza of this poem. The blood-dimmed tide is loosened, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack of all convention, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. So, what is the meaning of these four lines? In these lines, the poem delivers three amplifications of what is meant for things to fall apart. A tide red with blood is relieved and loosened over everything, suggesting massive violent deaths as in a war. Not merely water, this tide drowns bodies as well as innocence itself. It washes away purity. In its wake, wise, good people are reduced to self-doubt and uncertainty, while the worst of people become passionate and presumably powerful. So these lines have a deep meaning. The blood dim tide is loosened, then everything, the ceremony of innocence is drawn. The best leg of all convention, while the worst are full of passionate intensity, and ultimately they are going to be rich. Now come to the third. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when a vast image out of speechless Monday. Now try to understand these lines. The poem's narrator, the poet, now makes some guesses about what exactly is happening. His first surmise that some revelation is at hand. Some revelation is there. A revelation is defined as something revealed, but it is a word packed with suggestiveness because mystical vision of divine plan for humanity as seen and reported by people have traditionally been called revelation. In particular, the Christian God's plan for the end of the world was reported by Saint John of Patmos. It's featured in the last book of the Bible entitled Revelation. When the narrator then supposes that the second coming is here, he seems to indicate even more strongly that he witnesses an end of the world like the one described in the book of Revelation. The scenario tells of the return of Christ to the world, his judgment, all worldly begins and all worldly beings, and his foundation of another order in which the just are saved and brought to join God, and the unjust are horribly destroyed. But the narrator is then prompted into the vision of his own. He sights become troubled by an image out of the spirituous mundi. Spirituous mundi is a Latin word which means the spirits of the world. So Yeats and many of his contemporaries wondered about the existence of consciousness that was not exactly a god, but that was repository and source of the myths and imaginations of everyone in the world. Like a storehouse of symbol, Spirituous Mundi was seen as a parallel dream world accessible to everyone alive. It is not considered to be a realm for Christians only. So, the fact that the narrator's vision is a projection from Spirituous Mundi means that its audience will be broader than that of the book of Revelation, and that the vision will be more widely relevant and more universally mystical binding even than a vision of the second coming of Christ. By announcing his role as visionary, the poet places himself in the tradition of storytellers who reveal superhuman understanding of fate. So I think the meaning is clear. Now come to the next lines of this poem. Troubled by sight, somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about is real shadows of the indignant desert birds. Now uh, come to a myth that in these lines, in the poet's vision, an Egyptian sphinx is there. What is sphinx? A mythical creature that is half man, half lion, as we have seen or a story of Narsingh Avatar. In the same way, there is a phoenix, and its half body is a body of a lion, and head is just like a human being. So, in the poet's vision, an Egyptian sphinx steers in the middle of desert, while its motion startles nearby birds into angrified. The personality of this creature is sinister. It is without pity, and its stares is black. Certainly, this vision evokes the enormous ancient statue of a phoenix at Gala near Cairo in Egypt. The presence of a phoenix suggests that the narrator's eternal vision comes from a coherent place, even more ancient Christianity and more enormous than of the Western world. So, what this bird signify here? The bird again signify the phoenix. According to legend, there is only one phoenix in the world one time, and the word when it dies or destroyed, second phoenix come out of its ashes. So the world is about to end, and there is a preparation for the second coming. So the darkness dawns again, and now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmares by a rocking cradle, and that rough beast, its overcome around at last, slouches toward Bethlehem to be born. So the come to the concluding line. Although the poet has described a frightening and the menacing creature in form of a phoenix, it is not until the end of the vision that darkness returned. But from the visions inside, he has learned something. A rocking cradle. This rocking cradle is significance of this significance of the Christ has caused 2000 years of sleep, which is now at the point of nightmare. At this era's end, everything will change, awakening a rough beast who apparently due at precisely the moment is about to be born in Bethlehem. Since this town was also the birthplace of Christ, we are again reminded of the second coming of the Christ as prophesied in the Bible's book of Revelation. But as the poetic vision was a sun beast, the phoenix, we along with the poet remains unsure what kind of creature is arriving. What is clear is that something is coming. That is the demanded by the times, and its arrival will change everything. And that it will remain appear amid disorder and destruction about to be born in the incarnation of human. So we come to know certainly there is something is going to happen. What is exactly it is unsure. So this poem, the second coming, the poet of W.B. Yeats seems to speak from a place outside of time, despite the mention of the 20th century, which is in the context of the poem about the second coming, indicates the years between the 19th and the 20th century. The poem's revelation seemed to be so broad that they could arise from a poet of any time or culture. Nevertheless, in his heavy, symbolic, and mythical poetic style, in the adoption of the apparently ancient mythology, and in his imagination of worldly revelation, Yeats is preoccupied with his own sphere of history and culture in his famous poem, The Second Coming. So, I think the poem is clear to you. Have a nice day.